Yeah, you staged it! You staged it! Staged it! You staged it! Please don't be sensitive! Show the music! You staged this!
This from Hev, who says Starmer is just working at what he wants, sod the country and everyone else. He is a sneaky, backstabbing traitor to the British. Keir Starmer should be called Darth Utrendus, master of gradual betrayal and shadow deals.
Keir Starmer walked into the spotlight expecting cheers, but within seconds the mood turned cold. The crowd wasn't welcoming. They were ready for war. Boos echoed before he said a word. This wasn't the usual mix of critics and supporters. This was different. It felt personal, angrier, louder. What started as scattered noise turned into a wall of sound. People weren't just unhappy, they were furious. Starmer tried to keep speaking, brushing it off with a calm expression, but his voice was barely cutting through the shouting. Faces in the crowd hardened, some folded their arms. Others shook their heads, many just shouted him down. There was no mistaking it. This wasn't political disagreement. It was public rejection. And as chants of "shame" and "you broke it" rang out, it became clear this wasn't going away quietly. But how did it get to this point? Why did a man who once promised to rebuild Labour now stand in front of a crowd that wanted nothing to do with him? Let's unpack how everything unravelled, starting with the moment Starmer realised the room had already turned on him.
I'm here to speak to this man, not your security. You have failed me.
Thank you. Okay.
I've been a Labour voter my entire life. You have failed to be the opposition. You have failed to ask whether lockdown was functioning.
Just behind. Can we just
Do you understand?
Shall we go on in?
Thousands of people have died because you have failed to do your job and ask the real questions. Well, I am telling you now, and I hope this goes out, you have failed this country. You have.
From the moment Starmer stepped onto that stage, it was clear something wasn't quite right. He was facing a room full of Labour supporters, but the energy was off. Instead of warm applause or polite anticipation, the atmosphere felt flat. No smiles, no nods, just silence and stiff posture. Still, he pressed on, opening with familiar talking points about the economy. He spoke of fiscal discipline, stable growth, and Labour's vision for the future. But the words felt hollow in that room. The crowd wasn't engaging. People looked unimpressed, even bored. It was the kind of quiet that made every word feel heavier than it should. He moved to Brexit next, trying to strike a tone that could satisfy both sides. But that balancing act only deepened the disconnect. The attempt to please everyone came off as vague, and the crowd knew it. A few people in the back exchanged looks, others crossed their arms or shifted in their seats. The tension was building, but it hadn't boiled over yet. That moment came when Starmer turned to foreign policy. Specifically, the Israel-Gaza conflict. He argued against a ceasefire, presenting it as an unrealistic solution.
Allowed in my pub. No, I'm not going to physically hurt him. That man. That's assault. I am not bothering you. I am not bothering him. That man is not allowed in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go on.
Calm yourself down.
Get out of my pub.
Calm down. Sorry, can you keep out of the way?
Thank you.
And that's when the crowd began to react. Not with applause or even indifference, but with sharp, unmistakable disapproval. The shift in the room was immediate. The frustration that had been bubbling under the surface finally came to light, and Starmer was standing right in the centre of it. At first, the backlash sounded like murmurs, small, scattered, and almost dismissible. But within seconds, it swelled into something Starmer couldn't ignore. A loud boo rang out from the centre of the crowd, followed by another, then more. It was no longer a room listening to a politician. It was a room rejecting one. He paused briefly, likely weighing whether to acknowledge the tension or push through it. He chose the latter, raising his voice in an attempt to reassert control. But the louder he spoke, the more resistance he faced. The crowd had shifted from sceptical to openly hostile. Some attendees started shouting, cutting into his sentences with their own demands. A woman near the front stood up, calling out over the noise, asking about healthcare and child services. Her voice cracked through the auditorium, sparking others to speak up too. It wasn't a protest organised outside, it was happening right in front of him, face to face.
Anyone remember voting for this?
Fucking cunt, you see through all your lies, you're a cunt in disguise. Keir Starmer.
What about you, Richie?
Well, actually, Clark, no, we did not sign up to this because we believe in having our own sovereignty, our own sovereign parliament, not giving it to a foreign power, so it's a load of bollocks.
And you, Jojo, do you remember this being on any mandates?
Oh my god, of course I don't remember anything like this, Clark. The man is so fucking bent, he'd make a gay man look straight.
The disruption was steady, deliberate and coordinated in its frustration. And the more he tried to push forward, the more he lost them. People weren't interested in waiting for the Q&A. They had already decided they didn't like what they were hearing. Starmer had lost the room. Completely. The frustration in the room reached a boil. Labour supporters, many of whom had once backed Starmer's rise, now stood firmly against him. What had begun as discontent had transformed into outright rejection. As the crowd grew louder, a chant began to form. It wasn't aggressive, but it was relentless. "We are in crisis." The words echoed throughout the hall, cutting through the speech like a siren. Others joined in, repeating the phrase with more force each time. Some called for change, others demanded accountability. A few simply walked out, shaking their heads in silence. Even the Labour MPs sitting behind Starmer couldn't hide their discomfort. One stared down at his notes without writing a single word. Another glanced nervously at her phone, avoiding eye contact with the crowd. Their expressions said everything. This wasn't the reaction they expected, and they had no idea how to fix it. As rows of people stood and began to leave, the severity of the moment became undeniable. Starmer's voice tried to rise over the noise, but no one was listening anymore. His message had been lost, and the audience was already gone, physically and politically. In the days that followed, the fallout from that disastrous speech only deepened. For many within Labour's base, the event confirmed something they'd feared for months, that Keir Starmer was no longer speaking for them. His leadership, once seen as steady and pragmatic, now felt disconnected and uncertain. One of the biggest issues haunting him is Brexit. Back in 2016, Starmer was a vocal supporter of Remain. He pushed hard for a second referendum, even tying Labour's position to reversing the vote. But now he avoids the topic altogether. His message has shifted to move on, hoping the public will do the same. But they haven't, and they won't. The result? He's managed to frustrate both sides of the debate. Pro-Brexit voters feel abandoned. Pro-Remain supporters feel betrayed. It's a lose-lose situation, and his attempt to stay neutral has only deepened the rift. That moment in Southport wasn't just about Gaza or economic policy. It was the culmination of months of growing mistrust. Labour supporters weren't reacting to a single statement. They were reacting to a pattern. A leader who once promised clarity and conviction now seemed more focused on not offending anyone. And in politics, that's often the quickest way to lose everyone. That same indecision is bleeding into every corner of Starmer's leadership. His economic policies, though, framed as responsible and future-focused, feel borrowed from the Conservative playbook. Talk of fiscal discipline and balanced budgets might appeal to moderates, but to long-time Labour supporters, it feels like the party is drifting away from its roots. Then there's foreign policy. His refusal to support a ceasefire in Gaza didn't just spark disagreement, it ignited outrage. Many within the party expected Labour to take a firm moral stance, especially in a moment of international crisis. Instead, Starmer's position came across as cold, calculated and unwilling to take risks for justice. The backlash wasn't limited to the public either. Behind the scenes, Labour MPs have started to talk. Quietly, of course, but the whispers are growing louder. Some are questioning whether Starmer can still lead the party into the next election with confidence. Others are already weighing the possibility of a leadership challenge. He was supposed to be the one to bring stability back to Labour, to guide the party through a difficult period and make it electable again. But the numbers are slipping and the base is losing faith. For the first time, even his allies are starting to doubt whether he's the right man for the job. The damage from Southport hadn't even settled when Starmer made another move that left supporters even more bewildered. After years of taking a hard line against Donald Trump, criticising his rhetoric, policies and global influence, Starmer suddenly pivoted. In a recent statement, he spoke favourably about Trump's handling of certain international issues and even floated the idea of closer cooperation between the UK and a potential second Trump presidency. For many in Labour, this was a red line. This is the same Trump that the party had spent years labelling as dangerous, divisive and anti-democratic. Starmer's sudden praise wasn't seen as strategic, it looked like surrender. MPs voiced their discomfort behind closed doors, while grassroots supporters took to social media to vent their frustration. Some called it a betrayal. Others simply didn't understand the rationale. In trying to appeal to the political centre, Starmer is steadily alienating the party's core. And that gamble is becoming riskier by the day. It's one thing to shift policy positions in response to evolving circumstances. It's another to abandon long-held principles in pursuit of broader appeal. The Labour base isn't angry because he changed his mind. They're angry because they no longer recognise the party they once believed in. Starmer's defenders argue that these shifts are part of a broader strategy to make Labour more electable. But to many within the party, it feels like the soul of the movement is being traded for a few extra polling points. Long-time members are questioning whether the party still represents the values it once championed. Working class protection, social justice and political courage. And it's not just about Trump or Gaza. The confusion runs deeper. In one press conference, Starmer spoke about new threats and the need to update laws to confront modern terrorism. He acknowledged that traditional definitions no longer fit every scenario. On paper, it sounded like a reasonable statement. But to his critics, it was another example of vague positioning. Another case of broad warnings without clear direction. Another reminder that the party, under his leadership, often sounds more like it's managing public image than offering bold, principled leadership. Labour's identity crisis is no longer subtle. Every new speech, every pivot, and every carefully worded statement seems to pull the party further into unfamiliar territory. The message to voters is unclear, and in politics, uncertainty is fatal. People aren't waiting for clarity anymore. They're walking away. Among the party's grassroots, the mood is shifting from confusion to anger. Social media feeds are filled with frustration. From lifelong Labour supporters who feel they're being left behind, many are openly questioning Starmer's judgment, asking how far he's willing to go to chase swing voters while losing the foundation that's held the party together for generations. Some members worry that this centrist gamble will collapse under its own weight. Appealing to former Conservative voters while ignoring Labour's traditional base has created a growing divide, one that can't be smoothed over with focus group soundbites. The passion that once powered the party is now being replaced by apathy and distrust. And it's not just the public. Behind closed doors, senior Labour figures are deeply concerned. Whispers of potential leadership bids are starting to circulate. No one wants to trigger a crisis, but the pressure is mounting. The Southport backlash wasn't an isolated moment. It was the loudest sign yet that something is fundamentally wrong. What once looked like a cautious strategy now resembles political drift. And Starmer, once seen as a steady hand, increasingly looks like a leader stuck between who he wants to be and who his party needs him to be. Right now, Starmer is standing at a political crossroads. The Southport incident wasn't just a tough night, it was a flashing warning light. The boos, the walkouts, the chants, they didn't come from political opponents. They came from his own supporters. And that's what makes it so damaging. His team may try to frame it as an isolated event, the product of a tense news cycle or an unusually vocal crowd. But that explanation ignores the bigger pattern. Starmer has been steadily losing touch with the very people who put him in power, and each misstep only deepens that divide. His attempt to balance pragmatism with principle is starting to look like avoidance. Instead of offering bold leadership, he's delivering speeches that feel more like damage control. Instead of inspiring loyalty, he's raising doubts. This isn't about one bad decision or one controversial stance. It's about a slow erosion of trust. A party that once stood for working class power and progressive ideals is now struggling to define what it actually stands for. And if Starmer doesn't change course soon, the next wave of backlash might not come from the audience, it might come from inside his own party. Starmer wanted to unite Labour. Instead, he's facing open rebellion. Southport was more than a bad night, it was a warning. Can he turn it around? Or is this the beginning of the end? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want more no-spin political breakdowns, like and subscribe. This story isn't over.